Hi, and welcome to How Not to Think, the podcast that gets you thinking about your thinking. I'm Dr. Howard Rankin, and today I'm delighted to have with me all the way from Vancouver, Ben Barker. Ben is a brand consulting marketing expert. He's also a podcast expert, so I better watch out today and make sure that I don't make too many of my mistakes. But Ben, it's great to have you with us. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, Howard, a real pleasure to be on the show. It's Ben Baker, but you know what? People
Oh,
get my name wrong all the time, so don't even worry about it. As,
oh,
lo-
there you
as
go,
long as they
folks.
spell it right, that's all I care about. On the
There we go, folks. Right off the bat, I made a mistake. Oh my God. Please forgive me, Ben Baker.
oh, not don't even worry about it. It's not the first time not the first time I've ever misspelled somebody's name, so not even worth thinking about.
Yes. Okay. So, one of your own pitches for your business is what's your story? So let me turn that back on you. What's your story?
Yeah, I've been in the communications game for about 25 years. About 25 years ago, I got out of high tech sales. I was, if you've ever seen the movie George Clooney, Up in the Air, that was
Hmm.
me. I was super elite on two different airlines. God knows how many miles I had. I was the guy that called down to the desk to find out what city I was in. Never mind what time it was. I was calling out to see what city I was in. And my wife and I looked at each other and said, "This is a divorce waiting to happen." And so I went up to my the vice president. I said, "Look, either cut my travel days in half or double my salary to pay for the divorce. It's your choice." And they said, "You know what? Why don't we buy you out?" I said, "I'm listening." They said, "Find your replacement, help us hire them, travel them around for 45 days, introduce them to everybody. We'll pay you a 6-month override. You're out." I said, "Done." "Don't you have to check with your wife?" "No." It was on the way home, honey. I've got good news and bad news. But the best thing is they paid me to get the "what do you want to be when you grow up" training. So I had a buddy of mine who was an industrial psychologist who ran me through the Myers-Briggs, the whole battery of tests, to sit there and say, okay, what do you really want to do with your life? And what it came up with is that, Ben, you're great at telling stories. You're great at helping other people tell their stories. And somehow or other, I was playing golf and I met a guy who was in the direct mail business. And he says, "Come on, come work for me. We need people who are technical. We need people to do this." And I spent 10 years there and had a lot of fun. We killed a lot of trees. My two biggest clients were the casino industry and the grocery industry, and we did a lot of variable direct mail, a lot of cool stuff, a lot of innovative. How do you get people to come to you? How do you get people to care about you instead of competitors? And the big problem was with them is they were reactionary. Most of my clients were absolutely reactionary. If somebody put out a direct mail piece, they have to put something out in 3 days. Oh my God, we need to create a flyer. We need to do that. And it was all hands on deck and fires everywhere. And I said, guys, we got to stop this. We're all going to get ulcers before we turn 40 on this thing. We need to fix this. And what I said is, we need to start working on your brand. We need to sit there and say, you need to be one leading the pack. We need to sit there and say, you're going to be the person that everybody else chases. And we spend the time figuring out what their brand is, what's their messaging, who's their audience, why do these people care about them, what differentiates them in the marketplace. And it was an aha moment for me. And really, that's where my career headed, was helping companies not only communicate the value of their brand, but understanding what makes them different. So they stop being commodities and they start being brands worth loving. And we work with companies to help them brand internally, to help them effectively communicate on an internal basis and externally. So 25 years later, this is where I am. I started my own company, January 2008, right in the heart of the recession. And we're still here today and having a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. And I think most people would relate to this, whether you're a big business, small business, solopreneur, what have you. This whole issue of how do you brand yourself is a challenge that everyone has to face. And there's, and I've been doing that, trying to get that right for a long time now. And I think it's a challenge for people, especially if they're doing it on their own and they're not part of a sort of bigger organization. And even they struggle. But I'd be interested in your views on that. I mean, I'm a novice at this. You're the expert.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. I mean, I work with small organizations, I work with large organizations. Bigger companies, bigger problems, more sophisticated, but the tenets of it are really the same. Too many people think that your logo is your brand. Oh, I need to change my brand. Well, what do they really want? They want a new logo. No, your logo is not your brand. Your logo is an avatar. It's a placeholder. It's that swoosh that people say, oh, that's Nike. But what is Nike? Nike's not a clothing company. It's a company that believes in excellence. It's a company that believes in striving for excellence. And that's the brand that Nike truly is. And organizations, first of all, need to understand that your logo is just a placeholder. That's all it is. Now, how do you brand? And I'll send you a link to it so you can your your listeners can have it. I've written a book called it's branding step by step. Define your story, branding step by step, and it's a free ebook that we put out. And it really goes down to how do you brand yourself, and it comes down to, first of all, understanding what's important to you, either individually or as a company. What is the hill you're willing to die on? What are the things you're willing to fight for? What are the things you're going to fight against? What makes you different? Where did you come from? When you started a company, each and every one of us who've ever started a company for a reason. There was either a problem that we had or an opportunity that we saw. And we need to get back to that. We need to get back to the point of what was that original problem? What stirred ourselves to be able to move forward? And that's the impetus. And then we go from there to, okay, we're here today. What are the challenges? What were the opportunities that brought us there? What did we learn from this? And where are we today? And it's all about, who do we serve? Why do we serve them? What value do we bring to these people? Why do they care about us? Where are we going? And that is truly what your brand is. And it's a living brand. Where you
Mm.
are today is going to be different in 10 years from now. And it's a matter of understanding. It says, okay, how is our brand changing? Do we still have the same messaging? Are we still feeling the same way about things? And if the answer is no, the answer is why. And then you have to reevaluate your brand and look where you're going. But a lot of people, their brands evolve as they grow, and they get older, the company changes, they get bigger, all those type of things can lead to a brand change. But you need to understand, what are the core values that we still believe that is our purpose. It's part of our culture. It's part of our DNA of our company.
Yeah. And on my experience, listening to Simon Sinek for the first time talking about your why, he
Mm-hmm.
was the first one who actually put it out there. You're not what you do. What do you do? Well, we sell whatever. No, that's not what you do. That's not your brand.
No.
It's why, why, why. And that was kind of eye-opening, I think, for a lot of people. But you were clearly ahead of that game, I would suspect,
Oh yeah.
having
Well,
worked
this
in it.
the start with why the Simon Sinek start with why is a brilliant. If you've never read the book or watched the TED Talk, it's brilliant because you put why at the center of the target. Everything that you do is, why are we doing this? And if you can't answer that question succinctly, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
If all you're in business for is to make money, money is a dividend. It's a trailing indicator of success. That's all it is. The question is, why do we get up every single morning, shave and head, put on a decent shirt and head to the office? What gets us up? What's passionate? What drives us every single day? That's what our brand is about. Not the money, not whether you're a $5 million business, a $10 million business, or $1 billion business. Those are just, as I said, those are just trailing indicators.
Yeah. And again, why you're doing, not what you're doing, is more important in the perception. I suspect that certainly over the years, people have that you've worked with may have been a bit surprised by that because they thought, well, we have to tell people what we do, not why we do it. Has that been a reaction, or is that now more commonplace? It's sort of sunk into the consciousness that your reasons for doing things are important.
Well, when I first started off in business, I mean, I remember working for Xerox in the 1980s, and it was features and benefits, features and benefits, features and benefits. But no one said that it was benefits to that particular customer. That was the missing piece. It's okay, you do this, here's the benefit to them. It's not to you as a company, it's the benefit to them. And that, I think, even today, is a light bulb moment for a lot of corporations. A lot of corporations, sit there and say, well, okay, who are you doing this for and why does this benefit them? We do, why do you have this process? Well, it makes it easier for us. Well, why do you want to do things that's easier for you and makes things harder for your customer? And that's a light bulb moment for a lot of companies. A lot of companies sit there and say, well, it's easier for us to do this. It's easier for us, but you're making your customers work. And
Yeah.
if you're making your customers work, sooner or later, somebody else won't. And all that business and all that stuff that you were relying on to keep your machines moving is going to go somewhere else because somebody made it easier for them to do business. And they saw a better benefit to do business with somebody else than it was to do business with you.
Yeah. And I certainly think in the current environment today, maybe not 20 years ago or 30 years ago, if the message was, well, this is easier for us, that would turn off a lot of people saying, well, it shouldn't be about you. It should be about me. I'm your customer. Why not make it easier for me? That consciousness has completely changed, isn't it, over the decades?
Well, think about it. I mean, think about social media, email, voicemail. It's all built on leave me a message. I'll get to it when I get to it. There are people I know, it's a badge of honor that their voicemail is continually full and you can't leave them a message. And I'm going, how are people supposed to give you money? How are people supposed to do business with you? How are people supposed to understand how you can help them if you're making yourself unavailable? People that have these info at emails where it goes into the ether and maybe a week later, maybe 10 days later, somebody answers with some stock answer out of something. By that time, you've bought from somebody else.
Yep.
It's amazing how few companies communicate in the language and in the way that is convenient for their customers. And when we're not doing that, whether it's your internal customers or your external customers, when you can make it easy for people to listen to you, understand your value to them, they're going to engage. They are going to engage if they see that you care about them. And that's the big thing. Do you care? Do you really care? It can't just be a word as part of your mission, vision, value statements. We care about our customers. How many people have these mission, vision, value statements that nobody listens to, nobody remembers, and nobody lives? We care about our customers. We care about our employees. And then we cut their salaries at the moment's notice and put people on furlough. Or we fire people because it's easier to fire them than to train them. Or we compensate them in such a way that, wait a second, they're making too much money. We're gonna shrink their territory and increase their budget. Do we really care about our employees? Do we really care about our customers? And be honest with yourselves. Do you? Do you truly care about them, or are they just a means to an end?
Right. Yeah. I'm just doing a second edition of a book I wrote 20 years ago called Power Talk, The Art of Effective Communication. And it's still even more relevant today than it was when I initially brought it out. And of course, I've added some material, but there was stuff like that. I used a letter from a health insurance company that was just absurd. It was, well, you're not going to get paid for doing this. If you need help, you can call our hotline. I mean, it was all the things you weren't going to get. And I thought, that's crazy. Why would you write a letter like that? I mean, all you're doing is really aggravating somebody who's getting it, and I rewrote the letter differently to show that actually you cared. You can still convey that, but in a caring way. And it's just astonishing how backwards in some ways that was. I think we've come a long way, in due to people like yourself,
Mhm.
but just astounding that those sorts of letters would go out frequently, as if, hey, I'm the boss and I'm going to tell you, the customer, what to do.
Yeah. And a lot of it comes down to, and I hate to say it, is the fact that we've become a more and more litigious society. And a lot of those boilerplate letters that come back to you in one way, shape, or form have gone through the legal rinse hold.
Mm-hmm.
And and they're boilerplate, and they've got thick text in them, and they're designed for CYA. They're designed to cover the company. They're not designed to make your life better. It's to make sure that you can't come back and sue them. And the world was probably a lot better when we could reach across the aisle, we could shake somebody's hand and say, I'll take care of you, and mean it. And when we had far less times where the world was so worried about what could happen, that the boilerplates and the lawyers and everything and the contracts get all of a sudden go from being a page and a half to 62 pages, full of legalese that you need to hire your own lawyer just to read this thing, just to make sure you can actually sign it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Interestingly, as we're talking about changing attitudes and behaviors in marketing and in any business interaction, have you seen a change in the atmosphere? Because in the last few years, where things have seemed to become, for all sorts of reasons, more divisive and more hate-filled, and with the news media, really it's backing one political side against the other. Have you seen that influence this at all, or not really?
It is. I mean, you take a look at, and I'm not going to get into politics, because
No,
it's
please
politics or
don't.
politics. Everybody's got an opinion. Um, but the challenge is that media today is at 24/7, 365. Got to get it first. We'll worry about it getting it right later. Mentality. It's about the breaking news. I mean, through the last year of COVID, I have seen more breaking news flashing across a screen where it's really not necessary. I mean, it's, breaking news for me is a plane went down and hit the White House. That's breaking news to me. But everything has become hyped up. Everything has become amplified. Everything has become about, if we do shock and awe, maybe we can get somebody's attention. Until that shock and awe doesn't work, now we got to go amp it up even more. And that happens in social media, that happens in regular media, it's happening in radio, it's happening, wherever, because, trauma builds paychecks. If we can get people's attention when we sit there and go, oh my God, something's horrible, something's wrong. Wait a second, what's going on? I need to pay attention. But if everything's going right, if it's the puppy story, nobody cares about the puppy story. Nobody cares about the Goodwill Hunting, puppy stories. Those don't make news. It's the horrible crashes. It's the marches. It's the bloodshed. It's the shootings. It's all these things. The truth of the matter is are amplified way more. And whether it's the left wing media, the right wing media, everybody is amplifying the volume because they're worried that if they don't, they're going to lose their voice. And I think that that's a problem across communications. And I think that businesses, news media, social media, everybody's got to tone down the noise, because it's gotten to such a point where nobody cares anymore, and
You know what?
nobody even thinks that it's a problem anymore.
Yeah. I'm just finishing reading a book, a great book actually, by a journalist called Matt Taibbi, Taibbi, called Hate Inc. And it's really about how the news media over the last couple of decades deliberately evolved into the way it is today, which is It's got to be political because that's what fires people up. If it's not political, we don't even care about it. We're not going to run it. If we can't compare left against right or whatever, it doesn't matter which side you're on, we're not going to run it. We're not interested in it. We've got to be able to stir up people because when they're angry, they're going to watch more, they're going to be more committed. And it's very sad reading, but it is phenomenal, phenomenal reading, something that we all should read to understand how the media deliberately have gone out of their way to create this divisiveness simply for their own ends, to get more eyeballs and to get more money. And the issue is, how does that trickle down into everyday life? Is that going to affect how people communicate their brands, for example? Is that going to affect how you and I communicate with each other? Those are serious questions. But to see what is happening, where this has all just gone to reality TV, never mind really what's going on. We want to create the pain, we want to create the drama, we want to pitch two people against each other and have you pick a side.
Let me paint a picture in your mind. When I moved, I lived in Israel for 3 years, and in Israel, personal space is nowhere near what it is in Canada, or in the United States. We're 2-3 feet apart when we're talking to each other. It could be 13 to 15 inches in Israel, and you're quite comfortable. It's a sociological, cultural thing. People stand closer together, they get into each other's faces, they communicate, and it's done. And for living there for 3 years, I got very comfortable with that distance. And then I moved home. And you're so used to being that close to people, all of a sudden people are backing up and they're back, and you would move forward and then back up and they back up. And that's a really good illustration of what this is that we keep pushing and everybody else is backing up because no one's comfortable. And whether it's in business, whether it's in politics, whether it's news media, whatever, because everybody's pushing, everybody's sitting there going, I need to get my opinion out there. I need to make sure that you understand what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to say it louder. I'm going to say it more provokingly. I'm going to say it more, more brash, to be able to make sure that my opinion is known, because that seems to be what I'm seeing everywhere else. So that must be how I have to act. When we all take a step back and breathe and realize that, how we truly learn is through listening. We listen to each other, we understand, and value other people. And we allow people to communicate back and forth and have a conversation that's not politically charged. I disagree with you, you disagree with me. We both come from this from different points of view. You're not 100% right. I'm not 100% right. Let's sit there and understand each other. The world becomes a better place. But that's the problem. The problem is everybody is sitting there pushing their own agenda. Everybody's pushing me instead of we. That's where this whole challenge is becoming worse and worse and worse. And we need to step back from that.
Yep, absolutely agree with that. I just did an interview with one of the magazines about this issue, 5 things that we could do to end this sort of divisiveness, which is becoming systemic. And there are things we can do. We need to understand that the motives that are driving, for example, news organizations to present this to us. We need to understand that there are, according to the cybersecurity experts I've spoken to, 30 different countries trying to interfere and disrupt our society. We need to understand that we do need to go back to basic moral values, because the moral ship is sinking when we allow this to go on. It just is.
I agree completely. And, but it's challenging. It's challenging to pull everybody back from the edge. Everybody has toes over the edge, and they're looking into the abyss, and they don't care because everybody else is doing the same thing. And we all need to take 2 steps back, and we all need to sit there and look at ourselves and say, listen, I come to the world with this viewpoint, this set of ideas, based on my education, based on, my learning, everything that's happened from the day I was born up to today have brought me to the place where I am. Other people have their opinions based on the same thing.
Right.
How they were brought up, their experiences, their education is going to be different than mine. Why should we all think that we all think alike? Why should we all have the audacity to believe that what we think is absolutely correct and there's no other way of looking at any problem, situation, set of circumstances, whatever? It's a matter of looking at, here's a perfect example. You draw a number 6 on the ground and you're standing at it, looks like a 6. But if you're standing on opposite me, it looks like a 9. It looks like a 9 to you and a 6 to me. Well, because we're looking at it from different perspectives. It's still a 6 or it's still a 9, depending on, if the person comes and stands beside you, they'll go, oh yeah, it's a 6. If I go stand beside them, oh yeah, okay, I see this is a 9. But we're not willing to admit that there's another way that somebody can perceive the exact same thing that we're looking at.
Yep. And that becomes really problematic because to at least have some respect, you don't have to agree, but at least have some respect for other person's perspective is to recognize they've had a different life from you. And if you went through the things that they had, you might think the same way. Now, it doesn't mean you have to agree, but you do need to be respectful of that. That is very, very important. When I was doing a lot of counseling, I do quite a lot of couples counseling. Typically, I would at some point bring out a box of tissues, which I had sitting next to me on the desk. And I would say, to the wife, now you're saying these are tissues. And I say to the guy, and you think this is a box, okay? You could spend the rest of your life arguing whether this is tissues or a box, which would be a complete waste of time. What do you think? And they'd say, oh yeah, I could see. Look, hey, you have your opinion, that's fine. They have their opinion, that's fine. Let's be respectful. They're overlapping. Different. We need to get to, okay, why do you see it that way? I see it this way. Okay, that's cool. But, it just becomes a big argument about who's right. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And it's staggering.
I have certain friends of mine that we, during the political campaign, we stopped talking about politics. We came to say we're going to agree to disagree. You believe what you believe. I understand your point of view.
Right.
They understand my point of view. They think I'm dead wrong. I think they're dead wrong. So we're going to agree to disagree, and that's okay. But I at least I understand why they think what they think. And that, I think, is the missing link for a lot of people. We're not willing to take the time to understand why people think the way they think. You don't, as you said, we don't have to agree with it. We could be absolutely abhorred with what they have to believe, but they have the right to believe what they believe based on their set of beliefs.
Yeah. And in days gone by, one hoped that would be the approach. But today, it seems like if somebody presents a view that you disagree with, you're just going to humiliate them. You want to, make them feel stupid. You're going to come on with, a lot of emotion and insult. Come on, this is retrograde. This is going backwards in the human race.
But I think that there's hope. I mean, as much as there's, inability to understand each other, inability to care about each other, I'm seeing more and more people in the world that absolutely are figuratively and literally shoveling each other's walks, taking, going to get groceries for people who can't go to the grocery store, helping out where other people can. There are good things going on. The problem is the media is not,
Right.
focusing on this. But if we take a look at the world around us and the people around us, there is way more good. There is way more good happening, and there's way more people trying to understand each other than there is, this absolute us versus them. The problem is the us versus them crowd are the ones that are getting the microphone. They're the ones that are getting the microphone. And if the rest of us can sit there and realize, wait a second here, we're only hearing them more because they've got a bigger microphone. Doesn't mean that there's more of them. Doesn't mean that they're all right. Doesn't mean everybody believes that way. It just means that the people are being given a microphone based on the fact that, no offense, that's what sells advertising.
Yep. Yep. You're
So,
exactly right.
as human beings, we need to be able to go in there and question that. And we need to sit there and say, what news media do we want to listen to? Maybe we listen to PBS instead, or we go read newspapers again, or maybe we look at international news instead of or local news instead of national news. Maybe when all of a sudden the big conglomerate news media start realizing that their readership is going down because nobody wants to listen to the head talk banter 24/7, 365. Then it will change. But as long as we enable it, as long as we tune to Fox or CNN or Newsmax or whatever your readership of choice is, and you enable it, it will perpetuate.
Yep. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I think you nailed it there. Okay, so let's go back to your business.
Okay. Now that we've solved the problems of the world.
We've solved the communication problem in the country. We brought everyone together. You've obviously worked with all sorts of companies, big, large, small, and faced a lot of challenges. I'm interested in your work with internal communications as well as external communications too. What's your experience been there?
My passion truly is with internal communication, because as somebody who's branded companies for years and marketed companies for years, all this money and all this energy and all this time is spent communicating to customers. And then those customers turn around and talk to employees, and there's a disconnect. There's an absolute disconnect. First of all, half the company doesn't know what the marketing team is actually doing. And then, what they're promising customers is not reality to what actually they can be delivered. So the challenge is to get everybody internally on the same page. And that's where the real passion is to sit there and say, does everybody understand what the brand truly is? Do we all understand the purpose? Do we understand the mission, the vision, the values, and live them? And how do we do that? How do we build better leaders? Because I'm a big believer, abolish the word managers. You manage process and you lead people. And if we can teach people how to lead their teams, if we can teach them how to inspire, how to empathize, how to communicate more effectively, how to train, how to coach, the world gets so much better. And it all comes down to, first of all, do people inside the company understand what the company is all about? And we run an exercise for mid to large size corporations where, and we're doing it a bit online now. We did a lot more when we were live, where we bring in a graphic artist, and I'll sit down with the legal department. Then I'll sit down with the accounting department. Then I'll sit down with sales. Then I'll sit down with marketing. Then I'll sit down with the executive team, and I'll ask them the same set of questions. Tell me the story of the brand. Tell me about onboarding the company. Tell me about who are your biggest customers, and we'll go through a series of different things to find out what the company is about and what makes it tick. And then I'll take all these sheets of paper and I'll put them up in a boardroom somewhere. And I'll bet you $100 that they never match. They never match. And a lot of it comes down to perception. The legal department and the accounting department look at customers very different than marketing and sales do. Operations sees customers a lot differently than that, but they don't understand why we do what we do. Back to the Simon Sinek thing. And when we can get the executive team to understand the wide swath of people not understanding where it is, we have a place to start. And then we can come down and build a brand story that allows people to not only listen to it, but to internalize it, recall it, and retell it in their own words. And when they do that often enough, that's how culture and purpose and vision get built. And that's how great customer experience gets built. So all of a sudden, everybody on the inside knows why these are the customers we serve, and this is why we serve them. And this is why it's important for us to do these little things to take care of the customer.
And if you've ever experienced the ultimate in that, it's amazing. And I
Yes.
fortunately was. My wife had a serious medical issue that prompted us to seek treatment for her at the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. And the experience was incredible. Every person we met, and I mean every person, from the guy taking the money at the garage, the parking garage, to the person checking you in, to the physicians, to anyone, they were so caring. I couldn't believe it. We were there many times over a number of months, and it didn't look as if anyone ever had a bad day. It was stacked. One time we're walking around, the guy comes, "Can I help you?" He's clearly a doc. He's got, he's dressed up. Yeah. Oh, you need that elevator over there? I've never experienced anything like that. And everyone who goes says the same thing. It is amazing. And that is a result of doing exactly what you're trying to do, is make all the people in the organization on the same page as why are we doing this? We're doing this to support people, to help them heal. That's why we're doing it.
Yeah, that's purpose.
And it was, honestly, I could go on forever. I won't. But it was an amazing experience. As I say, when the guy in the parking garage asked me, "Oh, your wife, how is she doing? Is she doing okay?" Unreal.
It makes you feel special.
Absolutely.
It makes you feel special. It makes you feel that these people care about you. I mean, I use the expression, your brand is only as valuable as your unhappiest employee on their worst day. If you're sitting there with a bunch of surly, unhappy, unengaged employees that don't care about you, don't care about your company, don't care about your customers, how can you be anything other than a commodity? How can you just be one of 1,000 that people can, okay, I'm sick of dealing with these people, I'll go somewhere else. But if you're the one that people sit there and go, every time we deal with this company, we get treated like kings. We have this incredible, service that we get every single time we go to the hotel or we go to this organization or whatever. That's what we should all be aspiring to. And it's hard work. It's extremely hard work, and it takes dedication from the CEO all the way down to the person who sweeps the floors and everyone in between to realize what the purpose is and why they individually matter to the overall success of the company. And that's communication, and that's leadership.
Yep. And that's exactly right. And, if you see the employees sitting around doing nothing, talking on the cell phone, bit disinterested, is going to do their own thing first, that doesn't create a good impression. But it is overwhelmingly powerful when you see an organization, everyone pulling in the same direction. It's really incredible. And I'm sure you've made a difference in a lot of organizations by communicating that and showing them that they're not doing it, but here's how they can do it, right?
Well, a story that I tell pretty much every single time I walk into a company is, and I don't know if this is 100% true, if it's folklore or whatever, but it's from Zappos. And there's a story of Zappos of a customer experience rep who gets on the phone with the guy. He says, "What am I supposed to do?" And the guy says, "Well, how can I help you?" He says, "My wife died 2 days ago, and there's 15 pairs of shoes that just showed up on our doorstep." He says, "Let me tell you what we're going to do. I'm refunding you the money right now. Here's the UPS tag. I've already contacted UPS to come pick them up. They will be there tomorrow to pick everything up and take it away from you. We're sorry." And it didn't stop there. They hung up the phone. This guy found the local florist, went and got, a bouquet arrangement made and said, "We are sorry for your loss. from from the Zappos employees. He didn't have to ask permission. He didn't have to go 3 levels up and get a credit card. He didn't have to make sure that it was part of company policy. He just did it. And that's empowering your people. That's your people understanding what your purpose and your vision, what you're in business to do, and what you're in business to help. And I think that takes an enormous amount of ongoing training. It takes an enormous amount of ongoing communication. It takes celebrating those things. It takes leadership to be able to sit there and say, hey, listen, we need to perpetuate this story. We need to let people know what's going on. And that's challenging for organizations, especially organizations as they get bigger, to be able to let those little successes be celebrated. And I think that's what's missing in a lot of organizations. We're really quick to point fingers at people when somebody does something wrong,
right?
But we're not willing to point fingers at people when they do something right and say that was awesome. And let me share why this was awesome, and let's use this as a teaching moment for other people.
Yep.
And I think that's what really needs to happen.
Absolutely. And as you say, that's exactly what needs to happen. There seem to be some barriers there for making that happen. Oh, is this the correct thing to do? How will it be seen? Will the legal department approve it? And does this mean we have to do it every time this is a thing? I mean, and all those sort of objections come up, that they threaten the worthy, valuable instinct, which is to do something for somebody who's just lost their wife.
Mm-hmm. It's as I said, it's about humanity, it's about caring, absolutely, and it's about empathy. And all of those are part of communication, whether people realize it or not. The easiest thing in communication is to speak. The hardest thing is to listen. There's too many people that say, I've said it. Why doesn't everybody understand? Why don't people understand? I've told my staff this 100 times. Why don't they understand me? Well, because you're probably not speaking in a way that they actually understand what you really want and what's really important to you.
Yep, that's exactly right. And that's how some people that I know too in the leadership positions, I mean, if you think about that, so I've told you this a dozen times, you still don't get it. It's not your fault. No, wait a minute. It might be my fault because you haven't got it. And I'm meant to communicate that to you. So critical.
Yeah,
so critical.
I mean, a thought process that comes to my mind is, and this is completely different, is when I was in university, I took a class on finite mathematics. Don't ask me why. I thought it was fun at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was a full year class and it was 100% final. And an Aussie by the name of Ernie Cockane was teaching it. And he goes, Roy, says, this is 100% final. You need to be stupid and lazy to fail this thing. He says, one of the two will not do it. He says, if one of you don't understand something, come up to my office. I'm more than happy to explain it to you. If all of you don't understand it, that means I'm stupid and we're going to start again. Well, one day there's 5 of us at the front that pretty much we knew what was going on. All had these absolute blank looks on our face. And he went up to us one at a time. He says, Baker, do you get it? No. Alan, no, don't get it. He says, Roy, I'm stupid, erases 4 blackboards and starts again. And goes, it's not your fault if I can't communicate this effectively. If one of you didn't get it, okay, fine. That's statistically that's possible. Mm-hmm. If the entire front row doesn't have a clue what I'm talking about, it's probably me. And leaders need to take on that mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been great. Ben, that is your name, Ben, right?
It is.
Right, yeah.
You can call me Steve, call me whatever you want.
No. This has been great. We could go on and on. You'll have to come back. But tell the listeners and the audience about where they can reach you and your resources and so forth.
Yeah, the repository for everything is yourbrandmarketing.com. My leadership courses are there. My podcasting programs are there. All the workshops that I deliver are there. There's all sorts of free resources on my ebooks and thoughts on leadership. Everything is sitting at yourbrandmarketing.com. You know, have at it. Take whatever you can use. That's what it's there. That's what it's there. But please, if there's ways that we can help you, contact me directly. I'm always open for a free half-hour chat.
Yeah, that's great, Ben. Thank you so much for being on the show. As I say, we'll have to have you come back down the road here and continue the conversation. Fascinating stuff and very important too. So I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, but thank you so much for gracing the show with your knowledge and skills.
It was absolutely my honor. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're so welcome. Well, we'll catch you next time on How Not to Think.